One of the questions that I think puzzles a lot of Americans and observers of the American scene is what is behind the comeback of socialism. And when I say comeback, we've talked before about how at the turn of the last century, there was a lot of enthusiasm for socialism, and people were being elected as socialist mayors and socialist members of Congress, and they were running for president and getting money. We even had, as we've talked about before, we even had people like Eugene Debs who got 6% of the vote, which was a big deal, 1 million votes, when he was running against three people who actually became president: Woodrow Wilson, Theodore Roosevelt, who was a bull moose candidate that year, and William Howard Taft, who was the incumbent president. Okay, that's a different world. Today, socialist candidates, up until what seems like the day before yesterday, weren't attracting any attention. But Bernie Sanders did, and he is a democratic socialist. We have a newly elected mayor of Seattle, Katie Wilson, who is a democratic socialist. And of course, there's the example of Zoran Mamdani. What's behind this? Why is this all of a sudden hitting America? And it would seem to me that the best way to figure that out is to figure out what has changed in most of our lives. And what do we do differently in terms of allocating our time and making our schedules and living our lives? And the biggest thing, of course, has been the creation of the internet, social media, the web, and all of a sudden you have the politics of envy, which is what's really behind socialism. In other words, right now, when you have people communicating with friends or just looking at strangers on the internet and trying to, basically what you see is people who show you what a wonderful vacation they had, this beautiful new deck they installed in their house, the new wardrobe that they've gotten. Basically, it looks like if you watch people on the internet and you go to various websites and you're communicating even with friends or acquaintances, you're not seeing their hardships. You're not seeing their sacrifices. You're seeing all the glitter and the good stuff that they have been able to acquire. And I think that has created a big impulse for what is called the politics of envy. And that's why you see all of a sudden people talking about socialist ideas, and people in polling. Gallup does a poll, is do you have a positive or negative view of socialism? And for the first time, we're very close to about 50% of Americans who say they have a positive view of socialism. And that's because socialism is about taking money away from somebody else to give it to you because it's, quote, fair, because you want to distribute wealth differently. And that becomes much more attractive when you're seeing all the luxuries and the vacations and the fancy meals and the restaurants and the nightclubs that people can go to, showing their leisure time and showing the rewards they've been able to achieve. There's one other factor, and I think it's an important factor, is up until 1989, we were involved in a Cold War, which really went on from the end of World War II in 1945 until 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, and basically the Russian experiment, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, collapsed. Up until that time, it was so easy to see some of the horrors of socialist extremism. Right now, you look around the world and you talk about various countries and candidates that have different forms of what they call socialism. people use the term democratic socialism. It's different from communism. Chinese communism is different from what used to be Russian communism. But the point is that that example of a hostile power dueling the United States, it may be coming back, but in past years before the 1990s and the turn of this last century, it was always easy to see that, wait a minute, this doesn't work. They have bread lines that they have to go through at supermarkets in Russia. Russia was a very good example of arguments against socialism. Well, that's changed. It all seems more varied right now. It's not a binary choice anymore, but it really is, because the socialism doesn't tend to exist. If people are going to control how much money you make and how much money you get and how much money the government takes, and it's going to be a bigger and bigger chunk of the public's money that people have earned, all of that is much less clearly illustrated as a choice that people need to make, which is why in the last 20 years, you all of a sudden have politicians who aren't embarrassed to say, I am socialist. But if you actually look at the reality of it, there should be embarrassment. There's also a question of biblical commandment. Which biblical commandment basically tells you don't be a socialist? It's the 10th commandment of the Big Ten. What's the 10th commandment? Don't covet. Don't want something that you don't have that your neighbor may have, or maybe even somebody who lives in a different neighborhood. But that fascination that people link up with the web about viewing other people, viewing the real-life housewives of wherever, Beverly Hills, or what other kind of materialistic paradise you may particularly envy. The politics of envy is at the very core of socialism. And right now we are all involved spending hours of our time watching and envying sometimes other people, feeling guilt and basically instead of gratitude. And the gratitude we should have for being able to live and shape our own lives with hopefully with understanding and perception and a sense of history that can inspire, certainly for Americans, tremendous gratitude for what our ancestors achieved, what they gave us opportunities for by coming to this great country, because everybody, pretty much everybody in America, is someone who came here from somewhere else. And again, why the rest of the world admires us, I think that's terrific. But why we would admire the rest of the world and countries that have gone further with a socialist experiment than we ever have, that's a deeper question, which requires more conversation and understanding. Thanks for your attention. And don't let socialism and the politics of envy send you in a less than beneficial direction.